a nice rainy day down here in Southeast Iowa. Wanted to talk a little bit about biological testing, just the simple stuff. So most of the time we're using a Solvita test, but I want to tell you about the new system that Dr. Haney has developed and that we're using in the lab now, which is called an ERGA system, an infrared gas analyzer. So both of these tests, what you do is you take your soil, dry it down at the lab. They dry it down, put it in a jar, and they weigh it all out and stuff, so it's all very consistent. And they incubate that soil with a set amount of water for a 24-hour period in good conditions, that kind of stuff. So essentially it symbolizes a rainfall. So you dry down the soil to just kind of have it all consistent, wet it, symbolize the rainfall. The microbes respond, they start working, they get active, and they're respiring CO2 as they do that, because microbes breathe off CO2 just like we do. So in both these systems, in that airtight jar, we're collecting that CO2 in the jar for 24 hours. It's a small little jar. And then after 24 hours, we assess how much CO2 is in that jar. Okay, so here's the old system. It's called Solvita. It worked really well for a long time, but it does a pretty good job of analyzing lower ranges of biological activity. They just posted an article on their website just the other day at Woods End Laboratories. They do a good job, but what they say on there is that their test really only works from 0 to 140 parts per million, and at the edges of that you're going to lose some of your accuracy. I think even closer to 90 to 100 parts per million, we're losing some of our accuracy. Essentially, how their system works is it uses a color paddle that changes color based on CO2 concentration in the jar. So the reason it loses accuracy is you can only change color so far. Like, you can only get so far of a shade of green until one green is the same as the next green. Even though it might be way higher CO2, it can only get the color can only change so much. So now with Dr. Haney's system, this infrared system, now we can assess precise CO2 way above those kind of thresholds. He can get super high numbers. They have very accurate sensors. These are more like industrial kind of sensors and whatnot that they use in industry. Now we're able to use that in a lab setting and actually in an on-farm setting as well to assess CO2. So the reason that this is so important is that most of our soils are already at that really good level. Here in the Midwest, good soils, good inherent properties, we have a lot of biological activity. What we found this year in sending Dr. Haney hundreds of samples using his infrared system, we found that our 50th percentile of our data, like our average of our data, is 147 parts per million CO2. So that's the problem, is that what we've been doing with the Solvita system worked well while that was the best tool, but now we have a better tool to actually thoroughly assess our soil, which now we found that most of our soils, more than half of our soils, are above the threshold where before we weren't able to assess them properly. That's why this infrared system is so important. Brookside and Ward Labs are the ones utilizing this now in their Haney system, and they're up to date to be able to do this system, and so that's where we go and utilize. So make sure that if you're looking at biological activity, use this infrared system that Dr. Haney developed at Brookside or at Ward Labs. We're more than happy to be able to help you out as well, but use that updated system to get you the best precise data to assess your biological activity, and you can make your applications, make your recommendations, make your decisions, and track progress over time utilizing good, consistent data all the way through. Thanks.